Chapter 1. The Mare in the Moonlit Meadow. The soft hum of Rin Eldrin's hover wagon echoed across the quiet plains of Sutera, 5, blending with the faint chirps of nocturnal creatures. The planet's twin moons hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the meadow. Ran, a reclusive rancher, guided his vehicle with practiced ease, scanning the horizon for signs of his wandering livestock. His ranch, Eldrin Plains, stretched across vast acres of fertile land dotted with alien flora and sturdy enclosures for his prized herds. Rin prided himself on taming creatures others wouldn't touch: exotic equinoids with temperamental streaks, quadribeasts with venomous tails, and even a few species yet to be classified by xenobiologists. But tonight, his focus was on locating a specific missing mare from his newest herd, a rare species of bioluminescent equinoid imported from the lush moon world of Zephyra. "Where'd you run off to, girl?" Rin muttered, adjusting the scanner on his wrist. The device pinged faintly, showing a nearby life signature, but it flickered in and out like a failing signal. The locals had their own explanations for strange occurrences in the meadows. They whispered of ancient alien ruins buried beneath the soil, of electromagnetic anomalies that scrambled equipment, and of glowing apparitions that weren't quite alive. Ran, ever the skeptic, dismissed these tales as folk myths designed to scare off curious settlers. Still, as his wagon hummed to a halt near a clearing, he couldn't shake the prickling sensation at the back of his neck. The meadow ahead was eerily still, the air thick with an unnatural quiet. Then he saw it. A strange encounter. At first, it was just a faint shimmery soft glow that seemed to ripple like water under moonlight. Rin squinted, his hand instinctively resting on the plasma pistol holstered at his hip. The glow took shape as he drew closer, resolving into the unmistakable silhouette of a creature moving gracefully through the grass. He relaxed slightly. "Finally found you," he murmured, mistaking the figure for his lost mare. But as he approached, the illusion shattered. The creature wasn't grazing. It stood upright, its movements too fluid, too deliberate for any animal he'd ever seen. Its frame was humanoid, tall and elegant, with elongated limbs and skin that shimmered faintly in hues of silver and blue. What he had assumed to be a mane was a cascade of translucent hair, catching the moonlight like threads of spun glass. Rin froze, his heart pounding. The figure turned toward him, and he found himself staring into a pair of eyes unlike anything he'd ever encountered, violet and luminous, with swirling patterns that seemed to shift and dance as they fixed on him. "What in the stars?" Rin whispered, his voice barely audible. The figure tilted its head, studying him with an expression that was almost curious. It took a step forward, the motion so smooth it seemed to glide rather than walk. Rin's hand tightened on his pistol, though he didn't draw it. Whatever this being was, it didn't seem overtly hostile yet. "I mean no harm," the figure said, its voice melodic and accented, as if it struggled with the human language. "I seek refuge," the princess revealed. The words startled Rin as much as the voice itself. He had encountered countless alien species in his time, but none that spoke standards so fluently or looked so hauntingly beautiful. The being stepped closer, and Rin instinctively stepped back, his boots crunching softly against the grass. "Who, or what are you?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. The figure paused, its expression shifting to one of hesitation. "I am Lorana, daughter of the celestial sovereignty of Valerii." She bowed her head slightly, her posture regal despite her vulnerable appearance. "I mean no intrusion upon your lands, but I had no choice." Rin blinked, trying to process the words. Valerii was a name he recognized from fragments of galactic news and advanced, an insular alien civilization rumored to be on the brink of civil war. Their people were seldom seen beyond their borders, and their rulers even less so. "Your royalty?" he asked, incredulous. Lorana nodded. "I was princess of Valerii. My world has fallen to treachery, and I am hunted by those who seek to end my bloodline." Rin ran a hand through his hair, his instinct screaming at him to walk away. Sheltering an exiled alien princess wasn't just risky, it was suicidal. If her pursuers found her here, his ranch would be leveled, and he'd likely be dead before he could explain himself. "I don't want trouble," he said bluntly. "I've got enough of it just keeping this place running." Lorana's eyes softened, her luminescent gaze imploring. Please, I have nowhere else to go. If they find me. She trailed off, her voice trembling. Ren cursed under his breath. He had spent years building a life of solitude, avoiding entanglements that might drag him back into the chaos of the galaxy. But something about the desperation in her voice, the vulnerability hidden beneath her regal demeanor, struck a chord he couldn't ignore. Fine, he said finally. You can stay just for the night. But if anyone comes looking for you, I'm not risking my neck. Lorana inclined her head, gratitude flashing across her features. Thank you, Ren Eldrin. Ren stiffened. How do you know my name? She offered a faint smile. I've been watching. I chose you because you are different. A new threat. Ren led Lorana back to the ranch under the cover of darkness, his unease growing with every step. The plains seemed unnaturally quiet, as if the planet itself sensed the weight of her presence. By the time they reached his home, a modest but sturdy structure nestled between rolling hills, Ren was certain he had made a mistake. Inside, Lorana moved with a grace that belied her exhaustion. She marveled at the rustic charm of the ranch, running her fingers over the wooden beams and antique decorations. To her, it was a stark contrast to the crystalline palaces of Valerii. You live simply, she observed, her tone almost wistful. Not much choice out here, Ren replied, setting a kettle on the stove. What exactly are you running from? Lorana hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. My brother, she said finally. He betrayed our family and seized the throne. I escaped with the help of loyalists, but his forces are relentless. Ren frowned. And you thought hiding on a backwater like Sutera 5 was the answer? It was my last hope, she admitted. The Valerii would never think to search for me in a place so unassuming. Before Ren could respond, the sound of a distant explosion rattled the windows. His blood ran cold as he grabbed his rifle and peered out into the darkness. In the distance, the faint glow of a ship's engines cut through the night, heading straight for the ranch. They found you, Ren said grimly, turning to Lorana. And now they found me. Chapter ending. As the rumble of approaching ships grew louder, Ren's mind raced. His ranch was equipped to handle wild creatures and the occasional bandit, an elite squad of alien soldiers. Yet, as he glanced at Lorana, her expression resolute despite her fear, he knew he couldn't abandon her now. Stay here, he said, grabbing his rifle and a handful of thermal charges. If they come through that door, use this. He handed her a compact plasma pistol from his personal stash. Lorana took the weapon with a steady hand, her regal composure returning. You have my word, Ren Eldrin. I will not let them take me. The chapter ends with Ren stepping outside, the wind carrying the hum of enemy ships as they descended upon the ranch. The peaceful plains of Sutera 5 were about to become a battlefield, and Ren had no intention of losing. Chapter 2. The Siege on Sutera. The quiet plains of Sutera 5 erupted into chaos as the approaching ships roared overhead, their engines vibrating through the earth like the growl of a beast stalking its prey. Ren Eldrin crouched in the shadows outside his ranch, his pulse pounding as the enemy craft circled above. The glow of their undercarriage lights painted the rolling hills in ominous shades of red and gold, illuminating the stark contrast between his modest homestead and the high-tech invaders. Lorana, the exiled alien princess, watched from the window inside, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the darkened room. Though she held the plasma pistol Ren had handed her, her hands were steady, her posture resolute. She had been trained to remain calm under pressure, a lesson from her days as Valerii royalty. But here, on this backwater planet, with no guards or diplomatic protections, the weight of her predicament bore down on her. Outside, Ren muttered under his breath, his rifle cradled tightly in his hands. He was no stranger to trouble, having faced hostile wildlife, bandits, and the occasional rival rancher over the years. But these intruders weren't ordinary criminals. The sleek design of their ships and the precision with which they maneuvered suggested elite forces, hunters trained to track and eliminate. And they were here for her. A desperate plan. Ren scanned the horizon, noting the distinct glow of 3 landing zones where the ships had set down. Dust and grass kicked up in swirling clouds as alien soldiers disembarked, their armor reflecting the pale light of Sutera's moons. There were a dozen of them, possibly more, armed with weapons that gleamed with an unsettling alien energy. He slipped back into the ranch house, his boots making almost no sound on the wooden floor. Lyrana turned to him, her expression unreadable but her glowing eyes betraying a flicker of fear. "They've landed," Ren said, keeping his voice low. "Looks like a full squad. They'll sweep the area, and when they don't find you, they'll torch everything." Lyrana nodded grimly. "They cannot leave this planet with the knowledge of my location. If they report back to my brother—" She trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. Ren gritted his teeth. He'd already stuck his neck out by agreeing to let her stay the night. Now, he was faced with a choice. Hand her over and hope for mercy, or fight back and risk losing everything he'd built. The decision shouldn't have been difficult, but as he looked at Lyrana, her composure masking the vulnerability of someone who had lost everything, he knew he couldn't abandon her. "We need to funnel them into one place," he said, gesturing toward the barn. "It's got thicker walls, fewer entry points. I can rig some traps along the perimeter and pick them off as they come." Lyrana tilted her head, studying him. "You've done this before." Ren shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "Let's just say I've handled my fair share of unwanted guests." Setting the traps. The next hour was a blur of activity as Ren and Lyrana worked to prepare the ranch for the inevitable confrontation. Ren placed thermal charges along the fences, their faint hum barely audible over the rustling wind. He positioned motion-activated sentry turrets near the barn, salvaged from an old mining rig he'd purchased years ago. They weren't top of the line, but they'd do in a pinch. Inside the barn, Lyrana helped reinforce the doors with steel plates and secured the windows with planks. Her movements were efficient and precise, a testament to her warrior training. As they worked, Ren couldn't help but glance at her. She moved with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly, her shimmering skin catching the faint light in a way that was both mesmerizing and surreal. Despite the danger, there was an undeniable strength in her presence-a determination that mirrored his own. "You're not what I expected," Ren said, breaking the silence. Lyrana paused, turning to him. "What did you expect?" Ren shrugged, checking the charge on his rifle. "Something more fragile. Most folks in your position would have broken down by now." She offered a faint smile. "The blood of Valerii royalty does not allow for fragility. My mother taught me that." Before Ren could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted their conversation. The intruders were too close. The time for talking was over. The first wave. The attack began with a flash of light and the high-pitched whine of alien plasma weapons. Ren ducked behind a hay bale as the front gate exploded, sending shards of wood and metal flying in all directions. The sentry turrets activated, their automated systems targeting the first wave of soldiers. Twin streams of gunfire lit up the darkness, cutting down two intruders before they could advance. Lyrana crouched near the barn's entrance, her plasma pistol raised. Her breathing was steady, her eyes locked on the doorway. When a soldier appeared, she fired without hesitation, the shot hitting its mark. The alien crumpled to the ground, his weapon clattering against the floor. Ren allowed himself a brief moment of admiration before returning his focus to the battle. He fired in controlled bursts, each shot precise and calculated. Years of hunting and ranch work had honed his aim, and it showed. Another soldier fell, then another, their armor sparking as the bullets pierced their defenses. But the enemy was relentless. "They're flanking," Lyrana shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Ren cursed under his breath, grabbing a remote detonator from his belt. "Let's see how they like this." He pressed the button, and a series of explosions rocked the perimeter. The thermal charges ignited, sending plumes of fire and smoke into the air. The screams of the injured filled the night, but Ren knew it wouldn't be enough to stop them all. A revelation. As the second wave of soldiers advanced, something unexpected happened. Lyrana stepped forward, her hands glowing with a soft, ethereal light. She closed her eyes, and the air around her seemed to hum with energy. Ren watched in awe as the glow intensified, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice laced with a mix of awe and concern. Lyrana opened her eyes, her expression serene. "The Valerii are more than warriors. We are conduits of the celestial forces that bind the universe. Allow me to show you." She raised her hands, and a wave of energy erupted from her, sweeping across the battlefield. The soldiers froze in place, their weapons falling from their hands as the light engulfed them. They crumpled to the ground, unconscious but alive. Ren stared, his mind struggling to comprehend what he had just witnessed. You could have done that from the start? Lorana's glow faded, and she swayed slightly, exhaustion evident in her posture. It is not without cost, she admitted, but it was necessary. The aftermath. The battlefield fell silent, the once chaotic ranch now eerily still. Ren helped Lorana back into the barn, her strength waning as the effects of her abilities took their toll. He handed her a canteen, watching as she sipped the water with trembling hands. You're full of surprises, he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. She managed a weak laugh. You have no idea. As dawn broke over the plains, the two of them surveyed the damage. The ranch had survived, though barely. Smoke still rose from the scorched earth, and the bodies of the incapacitated soldiers were scattered across the field. Ren knew it was only a matter of time before more would come. We can't stay here, he said, his voice heavy with resignation. Lorana nodded. I know. The chapter ends with the two of them loading supplies into Ren's hover wagon, the horizon stretching out before them. They had survived the night, but their journey was far from over. Chapter 3. A Princess's Secret. The rolling plains of Sutera, 5 were awash in golden light as the twin suns rose above the horizon, burning away the lingering smoke from the previous night's battle. Ren and Lorana had spent the last hour loading the hover wagon with essential supplies, their movements brisk and purposeful. Neither of them spoke much. The weight of what had transpired and what was yet to come hung heavy in the air. Ren glanced at Lorana as she secured the last crate of provisions. She was visibly drained, her glowing skin dimmer than before and her movements slower. Yet, there was a quiet determination in her gaze, an unyielding resolve to press forward. You holding up? He asked, his tone softer than usual. Lorana nodded, though the faint tremor in her hands betrayed her exhaustion. I'll recover. My abilities take a toll, but they are temporary. Ren adjusted his hat, the familiar gesture grounding him. Good, because we've got a long ride ahead of us. He climbed into the driver's seat and started the hover wagon, the vehicle's engines humming to life. Lorana settled into the passenger seat, her regal posture somehow intact despite her weariness. As the wagon glided forward, Ren couldn't help but glance at her out of the corner of his eye. You've got a lot of explaining to do, he said finally. Lorana tilted her head, her expression curious. What do you wish to know? Start with that trick you pulled last night, Ren said. The glowing hands, the energy wave, what was that? Lorana sighed, her gaze drifting to the horizon. The Valerii are more than just warriors and diplomats. Our connection to the cosmos runs deep. We are taught to harness the celestial energies that flow through all living things, to channel them for protection and healing. It is both a gift and a responsibility. Ren raised an eyebrow. So, what? You're some kind of space wizard? A faint smile tugged at Lorana's lips. If that simplifies it for you, then yes. A dangerous pursuit. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant whine of engines, faint but unmistakable. Ren's grip on the controls tightened as he scanned the horizon, his jaw clenching when he spotted the source of the sound. A sleek alien scout ship was approaching fast, its dark hull glinting ominously in the morning light. They're not giving up, are they? Ren muttered, accelerating the wagon. They will not stop until I am captured or killed, Lorana said grimly. She straightened in her seat, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. We need to lose them. Ren veered the wagon off the main trail, steering it into a dense thicket of alien flora. The terrain grew rougher, the plant's thick roots and towering stalks forming a natural labyrinth. The hover wagon jolted and swayed as it navigated the uneven ground, its engines straining under the effort. The scout ship loomed closer, its sensors sweeping the area. Ren cursed under his breath, knowing it was only a matter of time before they were spotted. Can't you do that energy thing again? He asked, his voice tense. Lorana shook her head. Not without rest. My abilities require focus and strength, both of which are in short supply. Ren gritted his teeth, his mind racing. The scout ship was gaining on them, its engines roaring like a predator closing in on its prey. Then he spotted a narrow canyon up ahead, its jagged walls offering the perfect cover. "Hold on," he said, steering the wagon toward the canyon. The vehicle skidded through the entrance, narrowly avoiding the rocky outcroppings on either side. The scout ship hesitated at the canyon's edge, its larger size making the tight space difficult to navigate. Ren seized the opportunity, pushing the wagon deeper into the canyon's winding paths. The walls grew steeper, the air cooler, and the light dimmer as they descended. The hidden cavern. After what felt like an eternity, the roar of the scout ship's engines faded into silence. Ren slowed the wagon to a stop, his shoulders sagging with relief. He turned to Lorana, who was already scanning their surroundings with an alert gaze. "We should keep moving," she said. "They'll search the area on foot." "Not yet," Ren replied. "We need a plan, and you need rest." He climbed out of the wagon, his boots crunching against the rocky ground. Lorana followed, her movements careful but deliberate. The canyon walls towered above them, their surfaces etched with strange, alien markings that glowed faintly in the dim light. "What is this place?" Ren asked, running his fingers over one of the carvings. Lorana's eyes widened slightly as she examined the markings. This is Valerii script. Ancient, but unmistakable." Ren frowned. "You're saying your people have been here before?" "It's possible," Lorana said, her tone thoughtful. "The Valerii were once explorers, mapping the stars and establishing outposts on distant worlds. This canyon may have been one such place." Ren followed her deeper into the canyon, their path illuminated by the faint glow of the carvings. The air grew cooler, and the sound of running water echoed faintly in the distance. They soon emerged into a cavern, its walls lined with crystalline formations that pulsed softly with light. At the center of the cavern stood an ornate pedestal, its surface inscribed with more Valerii script. Lorana approached it with reverence, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns. "This is a sanctuary," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A place of refuge for my ancestors." Ren crossed his arms, his skepticism evident. "Does this sanctuary have a way to deal with those guys chasing us?" Lorana glanced at him, her expression serious. "Perhaps. The Valerii often left behind relics imbued with celestial energy. If I can activate this pedestal, it may provide us with the means to defend ourselves." Activating the relic, Lorana placed her hands on the pedestal, her eyes glowing as she began to chant softly in her native tongue. The cavern seemed to respond to her voice, the crystalline formations pulsing in time with her words. Ren watched in awe as the air around her shimmered with energy, the pedestal's inscriptions lighting up one by one. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the cavern, and a beam of light shot upward from the pedestal, illuminating the chamber. The light coalesced into a holographic projection of a Valerii figure tall, regal, and otherworldly. "State your purpose," the figure intoned, its voice resonating through the cavern. "I am Lorana, daughter of the celestial sovereignty," she said, her voice steady. "I seek the protection of this sanctuary and the power to defend myself against those who would see me destroyed." The hologram studied her for a moment before nodding. "Your claim is valid. The relic's power is yours to command." The pedestal glowed brighter, and a small crystalline device emerged from its surface. Lorana took it carefully, her expression one of awe and determination. Ren raised an eyebrow. "What does it do?" Lorana turned to him, her violet eyes blazing. "It will even the odds." The chapter's climax. Their respite was short-lived. The sound of boots on stone echoed through the canyon as the enemy soldiers closed in. Ren and Lorana exchanged a glance, both of them ready to face whatever came next. As the first soldiers entered the cavern, Lorana activated the relic. A pulse of energy radiated outward, disrupting the soldiers' weapons and scattering them like leaves in the wind. Ren took advantage of the chaos, his rifle barking as he picked off the disoriented intruders. The battle was fierce, but with the power of the relic, they held their ground. By the time the last soldier fell, the cavern was silent once more. Chapter ending. As they stood amid the wreckage of the fight, Ren turned to Lorana, his expression a mix of exhaustion and admiration. "You weren't kidding about that power." Lorana smiled faintly, the glow of the relic casting her features in soft light. "This is only the beginning." The chapter ends with the two of them leaving the sanctuary, Their bond strengthened and their resolve unshaken. The relic in Lorana's hands is their key to survival, but it also makes them a bigger target than ever before. Chapter 4. The Final Stand. The air around the plateau crackled with tension, charged by the energy of impending conflict. Eldrin knelt by a low rock wall, carefully placing the last of his improvised explosives along the narrow path leading to the plateau's summit. The warm glow of Sutera V's twin suns bathed the alien landscape in gold and crimson hues, a stark contrast to the cold dread building in his chest. Behind him, Lorana stood with the relic cradled in her hands, its faint luminescence casting soft shadows across her regal features. Though her body was weary from their journey and the toll of her powers, her eyes burned with determination. "This is where we end it," she said quietly, her voice steady. Ren looked up at her, a mixture of admiration and worry flickering in his expression. "That's the idea. But in case it doesn't go as planned, you should know, Princess, I don't have much experience fighting intergalactic armies." Lorana allowed herself a small smile. "You've done well enough so far. I have faith in you." Ren snorted, turning back to his work. "Let's hope your faith holds up better than these traps." The enemy approaches. By nightfall, the first signs of the enemy's arrival became clear. The distant hum of engines echoed through the canyons, growing louder with each passing moment. Ren and Lorana crouched low on the plateau's edge, watching as shadows moved in the valley below. "They brought more than last time," Ren muttered, adjusting the scope on his rifle. Lorana nodded grimly. "Collier doesn't underestimate his enemies. He'll have sent his best for this." Ren scanned the advancing forces. The soldiers moved in disciplined formations, their armor reflecting the faint moonlight. At the center of the convoy was a larger craft, a command ship bristling with weapons and flanked by hovering drones. "That's him," Lorana said, her voice tight. She pointed to the command ship. "My brother." Ren studied the figure standing at the helm. Collier's ornate armor glimmered with the same violet hues as Lorana's eyes, his commanding presence exuding power and authority. Even from a distance, it was clear that he was a leader who inspired both fear and loyalty. "Guessing he's not here to negotiate," Ren said dryly. "No," Lorana replied, her gaze hardening. "He's here to finish what he started." The first clash. The enemy forces reached the base of the plateau, their forward units fanning out to secure the area. Ren waited until they were within range before triggering the first set of charges. Explosions rippled through the valley, sending debris and soldiers flying. The initial strike disrupted their formation, but it wasn't enough to stop them. "They're regrouping," Lorana warned, her glowing eyes tracking the movement below. Ren nodded, his hands steady as he aimed his rifle. "Then let's give them something else to think about." He fired, his shots precise and devastating. Each pull of the trigger brought down another soldier, the enemy lines faltering under the unexpected resistance. Lorana stood beside him, her plasma pistol firing in controlled bursts as she guarded his flank. But the enemy adapted quickly. Drones swarmed the plateau, their glowing eyes scanning for weaknesses. Ren cursed under his breath as one of the machines fired, narrowly missing him. "We've got to take those out," he said, ducking behind cover. Lorana raised the relic, its glow intensifying. "Leave them to me." She closed her eyes, her body radiating a soft, ethereal light. The drones hesitated, their systems faltering as the relic's energy disrupted their programming. One by one, they dropped from the sky, their frames sparking as they hit the ground. "Impressive," Ren said, glancing at her. "Remind me not to get on your bad side." A royal confrontation. As the battle raged on, Collier's command ship began its ascent, hovering above the plateau. A hatch opened, and Collier himself emerged, flanked by his elite guard. He descended on a levitating platform, his every movement exuding confidence. "Lorana," he called, his voice amplified by the ship's speakers. "Enough of this. You cannot win." Lorana stepped forward, her chin held high. "You've underestimated me before, brother. Don't make the same mistake twice." Collier laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "You're outnumbered, outmatched, and clinging to relics of the past. Stand down, and I may grant you a swift end." Ren scoffed, rising from cover. "She's doing just fine without your mercy, pal." Collier's gaze shifted to Ryan, his expression darkening. Ah, the human. How quaint. Tell me, are you so eager to die for her cause? Rin smirked, his rifle trained on Collier. I've survived worse than you. Collier's eyes narrowed, his hand resting on the hilt of an ornate energy blade. We'll see. The duel. Collier leapt from the platform, his blade igniting with a crackling hum. Rin met him head-on, firing as he moved. Collier deflected the shots with ease, his blade a blur of light and energy. Rin dodged a sweeping strike, rolling to his feet and retaliating with a quick series of shots. You're persistent human, Collier said, his voice tinged with irritation. But persistence is not enough. Rin didn't reply. Instead, he reached for a thermal charge, tossing it at Collier's feet. The explosion forced the alien commander back, giving Rin a moment to regroup. Meanwhile, Lyrana faced off against Collier's guards. The relic in her hands pulsed with power, each wave of energy incapacitating her enemies. Though outnumbered, she fought with precision and grace, her movements a testament to her training. Rin, she called, her voice cutting through the chaos. I need you. Rin glanced toward her, his heart racing. Collier took advantage of the distraction, landing a glancing blow that sent Rin sprawling. Pain shot through his side, but he gritted his teeth and pushed himself to his feet. I'm fine, he shouted, grabbing his rifle. Finish this. The relic's power. Lyrana raised the relic high, her voice ringing out in a language Rin didn't understand. The air around her shimmered, the energy from the relic growing brighter with each word. The remaining soldiers hesitated, their weapons faltering as the relic's power overwhelmed them. Collier turned to face her, his expression one of fury. You don't know what you're doing, Lyrana. That power will consume you. Better me than you, she replied, her voice resolute. With a final burst of light, the relic unleashed its full power. The energy wave swept across the battlefield, disabling weapons, vehicles, and soldiers alike. Collier staggered, his blade flickering as the energy overwhelmed him. He dropped to his knees, his armor cracking under the strain. When the light faded, the plateau was silent. The aftermath. Rin approached Lyrana, his steps cautious. She stood at the center of the plateau, the relic dim in her hands. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes shone with determination. You did it, Rin said, his voice soft. Lyrana nodded, a faint smile crossing her lips. We did it. They turned to Collier, who remained on his knees, his head bowed. Lyrana stepped forward, her gaze hard but not without compassion. It's over, she said. Your reign ends here. Collier looked up at her, his expression unreadable. You think this changes anything? It changes everything, Lyrana replied. A new dawn. As the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, Ryan and Lyrana stood together, their victory hard won. The relic, now dormant, remained a symbol of hope for the Valerii and a testament to their resilience. What now? Rin asked, his tone thoughtful. Lyrana smiled faintly. Now, we rebuild. Together, they walked toward the rising sun, ready to face whatever came next.